Okay, so good morning, everyone. Today, our lesson is about intercultural communication. So before we have the lesson, let me introduce to you our learning objectives for today. So at the end of this lesson, you are expected to, first is to be able to identify the aspects of intercultural communication. Next, to identify problems in intercultural communication and to be able to identify and apply strategies to avoid intercultural communication breakdown. Okay, so those are our learning objectives. So let's start. So, intercultural communication. Culture is the accumulated learned behavior of a group of people. It is the way of life of people that they accept without thinking, and it is passed along from one generation to another through imitation and communication. So that is culture. When we were born, we are born within or under a specific group of people, right? Group of people in your community, in your country, in your localities or municipalities, or in your tribe. So they share the specific behavior and beliefs that they share among the group. So when you were born in that specific group of people, you also share the same culture. And it is passed along from one generation to another. Okay. So it's something that you were born with, like it's an onset during your birth. And you learn those beliefs and those things, whatever your culture is, you learn them as you grow. Next, intercultural communication involves communicating with another person or group of people coming from a background or community who does not share your beliefs, traditional symbolism, or values. So, since we are human beings, we are social beings, we interact with other people. When you go to school, you interact with your classmates, and they could come from different cultures as well. Okay, so you communicate with each other, you socialize, you interact. So that is intercultural communication, meaning people from different cultures communicate. Okay, so you share different beliefs, tradition, symbolism, or values. Okay, so that is intercultural communication. And one way to have like an effective intercultural communication is, of course, to respect each other's beliefs, tradition, symbolisms, or values. Okay, and we have here aspects of intercultural communication. So first is cultural identity. As mentioned earlier, culture is the sum of the beliefs, traditions, values, and symbols and practices of a group of people. So different culture doesn't necessarily mean you live in a different country or continent. Different culture can be seen within a community, say culture in rural areas versus urban areas. We can even observe different culture from another family who lives next door to us. So it doesn't mean that different culture, you really need to come from a different country. Okay, so a certain island, a certain municipality may have different cultures, just like in my place. So in our province, we have like 7 tribes, if I'm not mistaken. So those tribes share different culture, or could be in a family. Okay, so our family uh, practices different culture and tradition. Our neighbor also practices a different culture and tradition. Okay, so it can be seen all through, not just with countries, but it could be people living near your place, like your neighborhood or another city, another province. Okay, so it can be seen anywhere. Okay, so also people from urban areas like big cities, metro cities, and people living in the countryside or in the rural areas, somehow they share different cultures as well. Okay, different practices. Okay, And then next would be gender role. Gender is a social construct and is not synonymous to sex, which refers to the anatomical differences between male and female. So gender roles are learned and taught by culture. A culture's language reflects the social roles of men and women. So male language is often direct, commanding, and assertive, while female language should be polite, collaborative, and nurturing, especially in Filipino culture. So when you say women, you will be associated as a mother figure, the one who take charge of the house and household chores. Uh, you should bear a child. And for men, you should provide for the family. You will go to work and you should protect, provide for your family. So that's the gender role that we share commonly in the Philippines, right? However, in Western countries, right now, it's changing. So they say men and women are equal. Whatever men can do, women can do as well. Okay, so they don't conform anymore to the traditional gender roles wherein women should bear a child, should get married, should be housewives and all. So a lot of women are career oriented. Some women don't even like to have children. So they want to be very independent and they want to be leaders as well. So it changes as well as our world is evolving. Okay, so gender role is also changing. Okay, so the role that women and men play in our society, in our country, in our world. So that is gender role. Before they said that doing like cooking or doing the dishes is the role of women, but now they said it's for both gender. So it's like a life skill that you need to learn. So even boys are cooking at home. Even men are um, babysitting, right? So their wives are working and then the husbands are taking charge of the children. So right now it's practiced already. So not so much of the traditional orientation. Okay. Next is age identity. So this refers not only to their biological age, but it is also about how they think and feel about themselves as they age. Okay, how a person matures. So age identity influences one's self-image, language use, personality, attitude, and communication with others. We consider that some children can be mature and not all adults are responsible and matured. If you can notice, so if a person is already like, let's say 18 years old, that's the legal age in the Philippines, but some people are just very immature yet. They are childlike and they're not yet that responsible for themselves. However, for other people, they're just 15, 14, but they are very responsible. uh, they even help their parents earning money. So I think it depends on the situation that you are in the background that you have, in the experiences or the circumstances that you are experiencing, right? So especially those who are less fortunate, they mature earlier in life because they need to think of ways how to go to school, how to earn money at a very young age. Not unlike people who are very fortunate, they don't need to think about earning money. They just go to school and enjoy life. So somehow they mature late compared to those people, other people. Okay. So we may have dealt with cases wherein old people usually generalize that teenagers as brash and impulsive, even if this is not true. So that's true. So our grandparents, our uncles, aunts, and um, other elderly people, they associate teenagers as very impulsive, like they always do what they want to do without thinking very well. Sometimes it doesn't apply to all teenagers. Okay, so generalization. So it's not true all the time. So, moreover, older people, especially those have reached their 50s, to be fragile and slow. So, we generalize older people as slow, as um, very boring, but it's not true to all old people. So, there are, old people who likes doing adventure and hanging out and buying stuffs like gadgets and others that teenagers or younger people likes. Okay, so it's not true to everyone. Next, social status. So social status is determined and assigned according to income. So how much you earned, okay? How much you are earning. Titles, possessions, okay? So what's your title? Are you a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, or anything? Possession, okay? Do you have a lot of money? Do you have many possessions and uh, assets? Okay. So social classes in other cultures also differ from one another. Generally speaking, the lower classes usually work blue-collar jobs, while the upper middle and elite or upper class hold white-collar jobs or manage their own businesses. Okay, so this is somehow like a specification or a level of or categories of people working. So people who are in the lower class, like let's say they didn't got a degree, something like that, so they usually go to blue collar jobs, like for example, I'm not discriminating. I'm just saying an example, like a waitress or waiter or um, what else? Store clerk. Okay, so those are blue collar jobs. While those in the upper class, they could be CEOs, they could be um, owning their own companies and businesses. Okay, so that's according to your social status. Okay, so you really need to try to thrive. You really need to work hard, especially now you're still students. So work hard for you to um, elevate your social status. So even if you're already rich right now, don't be too complacent with that because things might change very easy. Okay, so make sure you got your degree and you can, you can compete. Especially right now, our society is very competitive. So make sure you can compete globally, not just in your place. Okay, so that's social status. Next is religion. So religious identity is when someone sees themselves as a member of a religious group and may be active or inactive in practicing their rituals and customs. So uh, we have different religions, right? So there are Christians, there are Roman Catholic, there are Islam and other religions as well. Okay, so we believe in different religion practices, and of course we respect each other. Okay, we're still friends no matter what your religion is. It's just a matter of respect after all. So religion plays a big part in the lifestyle of a person and seen as sacred and important. So some people, they follow a very strict practices because of their religion. For example, they don't wear um, pants for girls. They just wear long skirts. Some people don't even cut their hair because of their religious practice. Okay, so they don't marry people outside their religion. So something like that. So those are just examples. So thus religious issues and prejudices should be handled respectfully. Okay, so you should respect each other's beliefs and religion. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So what are the problems in intercultural communication? So of course, it's not all the time that we understand each other. It's not all the time that we have a common understanding. Sometimes people also argue about their beliefs, cultures, traditions, and even religion. Okay, So we have here problems in intercultural communication. First is ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is the term applied to ethnic bias. Okay, so there's a bias happening here. The term comes from the word ethnos, which meaning nation, and the word center. This is the conscious or unconscious worldview coming from a person's own perspective, which establishes an archetype or rating of other groups in reference to the ideal of his or her own group. Okay, so that ethnocentrism. This kind of worldview often results to the inadequate understanding of other cultures and judging other groups according to the preferences of the group they belong, in which often leads to assertion of the inherent inferiority of other groups. Okay, so tunnel vision is the idiom used for ethnocentrism. So in this specific situation, let's say for example, in a certain community, 80% of the population practices a specific culture, while the 20% practices or believe in different culture and doing different practices. So there will be inferiority. So the 20% of the population will be inferior to the 80%, right? So there is ethnocentrism in that case. So people coming from the larger group of community will try to inferiorate the minority or the 20% of the population having a different practice or tradition or culture. Okay, so there will be bias. Okay, so there will be people who are inferior and superior and inferior. Okay, so sometimes it depends on the number of people sharing the same practice. So if there are a lot of them, so they will feel very superior. Okay, so that is somehow of a problem. And for example, at school, so in that school, most of the students are, let's say for example, having this religion, let's say Christian, and there are few students who are coming from different religion, let's say Islam or other religions. So sometimes there will be bias, there will be uh, like they will feel intimidated or so inferior because they are only very few, and other students are almost all of them are sharing the same culture or religion. Okay, so that happens. Next is stereotyping. So stereotyping is the generalization made about a group of people underestimating their culture. So this is like very negative. So stereotyping assumes members of a group of people share the same characteristics. Okay. So when one stereotypes, you judge how a person behaves or looks based on what you believe about the group where they belong. So this is a very harsh. This could be very harsh sometimes. Like for example, uh, there's a group of students here, and they know that their classmate is coming from, for example, uh, like a foreigner coming from a different country, and they will say that, oh, maybe he is like a terrorist or something because he comes from Middle East, something like this. Stereotyping, that's rude. Don't do that. Okay, so it doesn't mean that people coming from Middle East are all terrorists. That's stereotyping. That's hasty generalization. Okay, so it doesn't apply to everyone. Not because a lot of ICs are coming from this country, it doesn't mean that all people from that country are terrorists, right? So they don't share the same characteristics. Even if we share the same culture, we also have our unique characteristics. Okay, so we could all be Filipinos. We have a common ground, a common culture, but we have our own individual characteristics, right? So don't stereotype everyone. It's just rude and it's very unfair. Okay. Next is prejudice. So prejudice is when one has a negative preconceived notion, feeling, or attitude against a cultural group. So this is like culture bias. So when you say a certain, when you talk about a certain group of people, all your thoughts or most of your thoughts are already negative. Okay, so that is just unfair. Okay, so these assumptions are often made even if there is a little or no interaction with the said group at all. Okay, so uh, it's really hard to give example because we might sound also like judging them, like being prejudiced uh, yourself. So some people, when they think of a certain group, immediately their notion is already negative. Oh, they are like that. So all of them. So negative only. They don't see the positive side of those people or group of people. Okay, so that is bias. That is prejudice. Okay, so you should not do that. So how do you avoid intercultural communication? How to avoid intercultural miscommunication? Okay, because miscommunication is misunderstanding during the communication process. Maybe you share a different language, there will be miscommunication. If you understand the language differently or the words differently, there will be miscommunication. If your gestures and actions are different, there will be miscommunication. So how do you avoid those miscommunication? So first delay attributing meaning. So nonverbal communication plays a big role in avoiding intercultural communication breakdown. Avoid interpreting nonverbal signals made by a person from another culture until you have read and studied their culture adequately. So here, nonverbal communication is a big thing. Okay, so what are nonverbal communication? These are actions, gestures, facial expressions, sign language that people do. So do not interpret nonverbal signals easily or abruptly, not unless you know everything or you've studied their culture adequately. Okay, so don't say that, oh, you're being rude because you're doing that gesture. For us, it's rude, but for them, it's normal. Okay, so try to know first, try to have a background first, culture check to that person before you say that what he's doing is not good. So it could be that um, for example, some people in Middle East, they man to man, they do like what we call um, in our language like beso beso, like like that, kissing each other's cheek, a man and a man. For them, it's a greeting, a polite greeting. For us, when men men do beso beso, it's, oh, are you gay or something funny or inappropriate, but for them that's fine, they do that as a sign of greeting or respect. Okay, so don't judge immediately without knowing their culture. Okay, next, develop awareness of your nonverbal communication. So be aware of the nonverbal communication that you do. Okay, so be mindful of how you use your face, your gestures, your body language, and voice when communicating, especially if you are, uh, if, for example, you went to a different country, you you travel to a different country for vacation. So be careful in your actions, in your gestures, okay, and even with your voice. Understanding how certain cultures react to certain body language can smoothen and make the experience with other cultures pleasurable. Okay, so make sure you're doing the right thing, especially when you visit other countries. Just like, for example, in Russia, I've heard that in Russia, smiling to strangers is like a violation or something that you should avoid when you're there, because they only smile when they know the person, when they are friends or family members. But when you're just walking in the road and then You don't know each other, especially if you're a foreigner. So avoid smiling to them. In Philippines, that's very nice, right? Smiling to strangers are very nice, very kind and friendly for us. It's very positive. In their country, it's different. It's rude for them. Okay, so don't do that. So make sure you know their cultures before, even if your intention is good, because they have different culture, that could be rude for them. Okay, so make sure you are aware of the nonverbal communication that you are doing. So be aware of your voice as well, of your fidgeting, or even the space you allot when communicating with people from other cultures. So some cultures, they have a very strict distancing, like when you don't need, or you should avoid sitting next to a woman, something like that. For us, it's fine, like very close, but for them, it might be offensive. Okay, so make sure you are aware of your actions, your gestures, your body language. Okay, next. Oops, sorry. Check whether nonverbal messages correspond to verbal messages. So it is given that you will not be able to understand the language of another group of culture immediately. So you have to be very observant and persistent in listening when you communicate with them. Okay, so when you're talking with people from a different culture, make sure you are very observant and you are listening carefully when you communicate with them. So sometimes misinterpretation can happen when the verbal and nonverbal messages come in conflict with each other. So paying attention and being very mindful of how a person speaks or reacts can give you clues if you really are communicating with each other. You know what? For verbal communication, this also happens because we have different accents. So a word might be mispronounced because he is coming from a different place, and then you're talking with a person from that place. So you use their language, could be, or a term from their language, and then you mispronounce that one. And it could mean different. It could be funny or it could be offensive because of how you say it. Okay. So, and also if someone is talking to you, like trying to communicate with you in English or in Filipino, and they're not really a native speaker, so try to understand that sometimes they could slip or they could mispronounce words. So don't laugh, okay, at them. So try to understand that that could happen. Okay, so be open to understanding to avoid miscommunication. Okay, so even us, uh, here you are coming from Luzon, Visayas, and others from Mindanao. So people coming from Luzon don't understand. Some of you don't understand our language, our native tongue, like Cebuano or Bisaya. So don't judge. Don't don't be rude. Okay. So Bisaya, we have, when we speak Tagalog, we have a very hard accent, or our tongue doesn't seem to cooperate. So that's why I'm not really speaking Tagalog, because I just cannot sustain. My tongue is really hard, you know. So that's common, because in Philippines we are very diverse. We have different cultures, languages, dialects, traditions, cultures, food preferences, and all. But we are all Filipinos. So it's just a matter of respect to everyone, whatever religion, community, social status, um, educational background. It doesn't matter. If you respect people coming from different walks of life, then you're good to go. Okay. So it's just a matter of respect and understanding. We're all human. Okay. That's our common ground. So be humane all the time. Okay. So thank you so much for your time. And that ends our lesson for today.